It's been a while since I made one of my advice to newbies videos. This one's been on my mind for ages and it keeps coming up. So here we are with me poking my nose into other people's spiritual business once again. As I usually mention at the start of these, I've been a Celtic polytheist for over 40 years. I pay attention to the trends I see online and the questions being asked by new people. Obviously, this is going to be my opinions, but they're based on experience. I'm not trying to sell you anything. So let's talk about converting to paganism, or at least Celtic forms of paganism. Some established religions have a clear path to joining. This usually involves being instructed by the clergy of that religion, reading its holy books, or symbolic acts like getting baptized. But that's other religions. It isn't most modern pagan paths, and definitely not the Celtic ones. Why? Because we're not an organized religion. There's no big Celtic group you can join. There are a few scattered people who consider themselves to be clergy, and some of them are recognized as such within a specific group. They're few and far between, and often not particularly official. There are some organized groups around, mostly Druid orders, who have training programs. But in spite of using the word Druid, most of them don't have a specific set of beliefs about Celtic deities. We have some wonderful mythological literature, and while most of us consider it worth studying, we don't look on it as holy scripture, and it isn't going to give you a list of rules to live by. It doesn't define sin. It won't tell you how to have a good afterlife or describe our gods in an easy to digest way. We don't have any widely recognized joining rituals, although a specific group might. And most of all, sin and redemption, heaven and hell simply don't exist for us. There's no agreed understanding about what happens after you die, but we're generally not worried about it since we don't believe in sin or hell. But most of the people I see using the word convert, as in how do you convert to Celtic polytheism or Irish paganism or whatever, have been raised as Christians in North America. Now, I'll talk about why that's significant in a moment. Of course, I've heard it from other Christians and other Muslims and maybe a Buddhist or two over the years. So I'm going to talk about this from the point of view of the US and how religion is viewed here. But if you have this question, how do I convert? Probably a lot of this will ring true for how you're thinking about the question, even if you live somewhere else. The US has a high proportion of people who actually go to church and more or less believe its teachings compared to most parts of Europe and many parts of the world. This affects how all the people in the US think about religion, even the agnostics and atheists. We're more likely to believe that there's some kind of God or higher power. If we've stopped really believing that and we've stopped going to church, we often feel the loss of that on a social level, or it causes a problem in our family relationships. If we don't like the Ten Commandments, we're kind of looking for something else to replace them often. And we can be very legalistic about stuff or rigid about how we should define certain things involving social justice or what words are too offensive to say. We want to know the rules. Now, not every American has these tendencies or behaviors, but relative to people in a lot of cultures, most of us do, at least a bit. So when someone says, how do I convert to Celtic polytheism? There are usually some assumptions and some worries behind that question. So let's deal with the worries first. Because Christianity is built on ideas of sin and redemption, heaven and hell, it's natural that people leaving Christianity worry about going to hell. If you've grown up with it, or the people you meet in everyday life think this way, it's a difficult idea to completely let go of. And I'm not here to tell you what to believe. It's not up to me to tell you how to let go of your belief in all that. All I can say is, I don't believe it. I don't worry about it. And Celtic polytheism isn't going to offer you a solid statement like, oh, don't worry, you'll go over a rainbow bridge to a paradise. Or, it's fine, you'll be reincarnated into a new body. I've made a whole video called Death and Celtic Belief that you should probably watch after this, but the answers aren't very concrete. If you've been thinking of Christianity as a sort of insurance policy against going to hell, you won't find a new policy with us. I guess if it takes faith to believe in sin and redemption, heaven and hell, it also takes faith to let go of that belief. You'll know when you're at that point. But I think some people are looking for an insurance policy. It's like they're thinking, okay, I'm fed up with my religion, so I need to look for a new one. So they start looking around for a new insurance policy to make them feel safe. They want to know what the terms and conditions of Celtic religion are. How do I get saved? How do I have a pleasant afterlife? What rules should I follow so that I'm literally safe? I don't think that's how changing your religion should work. You can't say, okay, the old policy ends at 2 o'clock and the new one starts at 2:01. If I just sit still for 1 minute, I'll be okay. If you'd like to delve a little deeper into the topics in my videos, you might enjoy taking one of my online classes. There's almost always something on offer. Some classes have tiered pay what you can pricing, and there are usually a few scholarships available for the more expensive classes. To get notifications about classes and about scholarships when they're announced, you can go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter or follow me on my Patreon page. Now, there's always a tendency for old people like me to say, oh, you should do it the way I did it. That isn't always the best advice, but hear me out. I just want to help. Like a lot of people, I slowly came to the realization that I didn't believe in what the Christians had to offer. I didn't have religion forced on me as a kid like some people do. I was really interested when I was a little older in my late teens. I read the Bible through several times. I explored several different approaches to Christianity. Some of them were kind of beautiful, but I just didn't believe in the sin and redemption thing. I didn't believe in Jesus. And without that, Christianity just falls apart. So I wandered off. I wanted to believe in something. I needed not just a spiritual life, I needed the divine. I began to wonder about the gods my ancestors in Britain would have believed in before Christianity. That's how I ended up here. But there was a gap of 5 years or so when I was just kind of lost, but I was also growing. So I'm lucky in that I was brought up to think for myself, not told what I was supposed to think. I probably spend way too much time thinking about how to be ethical, what defines good and bad behavior, what makes sense to me about unknowable questions about death and religion and so on. If I could go back and observe myself during that 5 years, I was always convinced that the gods were real. I just didn't know their names. I didn't know how to find them. Off and on, I looked for those answers until I did find them. But I also got to know myself. What do I see as right and wrong? How do I want to be in the world? How do I go about fixing the parts of me that are a bit broken or grow the bits that are a bit stunted? And we all have those things. By the time I began to arrive at that place where I could locate the gods and I began relating to them, I already knew right from wrong. I wasn't looking for a set of rules and I wasn't looking for insurance. Looking back, I think that break was really good for me. You can't leap from one religion to another across a 1 minute gap, clinging to the idea of safety. At least, not if you're leaping into Celtic religion. So, by all means, explore Celtic paganism. Feel free to worship Celtic deities anytime you want to, but for your own sake, spend some time thinking about who you are, what you believe, and what you can believe in. For the most part, my ideas of right and wrong don't grow out of my Celtic religion. I brought those things with me. I still question and examine my beliefs. Sometimes they change as I grow. Celtic polytheism doesn't require me to be static. I'm not on a narrow, stony path to salvation with a list of commandments to follow. I try to do the right thing based on my personal sense of ethics. I'd do that if I was an atheist. I would do that if I was a Buddhist. Doing the right thing should be its own reward, not a way to get to heaven.